Hello and welcome to Gibs Business. The demographics of Africa's children are experiencing a shift on a scale perhaps unprecedented in human history. According to UNICEF'S Generation 2030 Africa report, almost 2 billion babies will be born in Africa in the next 35 years. Over the same period, Africa's under-18 population will increase by 2/3, reaching almost 1 billion by mid-century. UNICEF's David Anthony explains.
The African population will double by 2050. That's like adding a China to Africa in 35 years. This is absolutely unprecedented in human history, that many people will join an existing population of about 1.1 billion in that space of time. Specifically going to the child population, we're going to have around about 650 million more children in the next 35 years, taking the number of under-18s in Africa to 1 billion. Again, a China of children in Africa. Africa has already the highest proportion of children as part of its total population. 40% of all Africans are under the age of 18 years old. If you take that to youth, it becomes way over 50%. So when you talk about Africa, you aren't necessarily talking about youth and children.
Right.
Yeah? The majority of Africans are young. 1 in every 3 children also is going to be African very soon by the mid-century. And by the end of the century, as we said, 41% of children will be there. Now, this is the median scenario. This is not the high fertility scenario. And even though fertility rates in Africa are coming down, there's still now on average, a woman in Africa of childbearing years has around about 4.5 children compared to the global average of around just over 2. The number of births, again, things that we have to think about, number of births in Africa in the next 15 years, not even till 2050. By 2030, 1.8 billion births will take place on this continent. That's a sobering thought. Do we have enough facilities? So with these statistics in mind, our issue was to look further. What are the forces driving the high fertility rates in Africa? And one of them very clearly is adolescent fertility. Much, much higher than the rate of the global rate of adolescent fertility in Africa. It's almost like 1 in every 10 adolescents is having a child. Or in female adolescents is having a child. And I think the other forces that we are seeing driving high fertility levels in Africa are things such as fragility and conflict. It's very clear that in fragile states in Africa, fertility rates are much higher than in non-fragile states.
We go from thinking about the ballooning population from being a liability to a real asset. And that ultimately for me comes from education, right? Unless we invest in all of these young people that are being produced, it's going to be a wasted generation. My mother, whenever she goes and travels to the States or whatever, she comes back, she's like, man, they must come and build those highways for us here. I said, no. Why don't we build it ourselves? And the only way we can do that is by, investing in our brain power. So I think that it's time for us to stop thinking about incremental changes. What we need is a complete step change where we need to think about radical solutions to the problem of education in Africa.
Yeah.
Such that we leapfrog the way we educate ourselves. And so that in a very quick generation, we're able to actually create people who are equipped to create their own jobs through entrepreneurship. And we're able to educate themselves and are actually able to utilize all these resources that you talk about to actually create wealth so that we can look after ourselves, pave our own roads, build our own houses, educate ourselves. Because unless we do that, we'll be begging the rest of the world for the rest of our lives.